Hello, you beautiful people. Well, in this stream, I had intended to actually do action, landscape, and street photography, but I didn't actually make it into any village or town to be able to do the street photography. But this is a longer video than normal, so I'm just going to hand you over to past me, and he's going to talk you through my process. It's quite pretty. Now I'm focusing mainly, so I do need to be up quite high. You've got quite a few diagonal lines. So you've got the leading line of the road, which goes up and also goes back down. You've got the other road sort of horizontal. You've got this hill coming down. You've got the hills in the background, and you've got the mountain at the back. You've got a fairly interesting sky as well. So what I'm going to do, and it's something I didn't realise before, is blur strength is at 98.6%, which is not what you need for landscape photography. So I'm going to drop that right down to 0, because I want as much detail as far back as possible as I can get. I basically want the best quality I can get. So, going to just mess with the exposure. I was just having a look. And no, I'm going to keep it at its stock setting. So first, I need to crop the picture into portrait. Now I'm zooming in a little bit. So the top line doesn't quite work. I'm going to make it central. I just need to zoom in a little bit more to give me more headroom to be able to do that. Now, I want to get rid of some of the haziness, so a little bit of dehaze there. I'm going to drop the blacks to give it more contrast, and increase the whites to do the same. And because I've done that with the light, I need to reduce the colour slightly. And that's about right. Bit of vignette to draw the eye in, and the picture is done. I've pretty much always taken photographs in computer games. Most of them were just to capture either interesting bugs, to capture moments I was proud of, or just things that I felt that I had discovered in a computer game. Like, not quite Easter eggs, but along those lines. I'm just waiting for this carriage to be in the right position. I'm saying about there. Again. So what I'm doing is I'm using the tree to frame the subject, which is the horse and carriage. The leading lines, so the carriage trail, goes to the horse and cart, so that sort of reinforces that's where I want you to look. Again, I'm going to blur everything to its maximum, and it just makes it easier for me to find the horse and cart. And then I'm just going to draw it. That seems to have done nothing. That's interesting. That's genuinely something I wouldn't really expect in a computer game, but it shows the level of detail that we've come to know and love in Rockstar. Aperture doesn't work on subjects that are too far away. So as you can see, it makes absolutely no difference what strength I have this at. The foreground and background will remain exactly in the same level of focus. No, I tell a lie, there is a little bit of blur in the foreground, nothing in the background. See, now the foreground is slightly more in focus, but we have the tree and the horse and cart in focus, which is what I was going for. So first let's crop it into portrait, and now I'm going to try and zoom in to make allow me to center the horse and cart, but also make it slightly larger. So the next is to reduce the saturation, and this allows me to look specifically at light. So I'm increasing the contrast slightly, but I'm going to soften that slightly by raising the shadow, brighten the picture a touch, but only the highlights. I'm quite happy with that, so let's bring the colour back in. I don't want it too strong, I want it to be almost like a old faded painting, but I don't want to overdo that. So I'm quite happy with that but I just need to lower the blues because they're too distracting. I want them to be an element, but I don't want them to take the eyes away from the cart. And it's the same as with the green here. I just reduced the luminance of them, and now I'm reducing the saturation. With the yellows, I want to bring them more towards orange, just to complement the blue in the sky. Touch of saturation on the orange. That's about right, but I just need a bit darker to make it more orangey. Okay, so now a touch of Vignette, and that's the picture done. Let's see if we can capture this, I wouldn't quite say drama, but this action a little bit better. And again, without movement, it makes it very, very difficult. So that's what I'm looking for, is something that sways. They're swaying in the wrong way. And this is particularly challenging because it's a very poor light. You won't be able to see the movement of the dark clouds. Actually, that light there is quite interesting. So again, we've got the grass there. That works quite well. Trying to have a moderately interesting foreground, but nothing too extreme. Let's drop that down a bit. Does that ruin the angle? Not massively. Though I do want most of those in the shadow. It's a very interesting sky. And again, maximize blur strength. Let's see if we can pick these out a little bit. And they do stand slightly prouder. Decrease the blur a bit. And so I'm picturing dead center. That's where I'm focusing at. Because I think that the majority of the light, or at least the bowl of the snow-capped hills, is going to be in the cropped picture. let's just adjust quite a lot the exposure. So I'd say about there. And it's especially in the older games, it's better to do it in game than it is to do it in editing, simply because the amount of artifacts that can come in from your shadows when you increase your shadows or increase the or brighten the blacks, uh, it can ruin a picture. Because there's a picture I'd taken of John Marston. John Arthur, and his strap was exceptionally pixelated. It was a lot of, and his jacket as well. There was a lot of artifacts in there, so I had to keep it quite dark. So I lost a lot of detail. I was still able to pull quite a lot out of the face, so it worked, but it was a lot of restrictions. So that's why I'm doing this now. So first of all, let's crop the picture. I'm zooming in because I want to really focus on the blades of grass. Just trying to center them. About there. Okay, so next, just going to move across to the shadows. I want to increase them just to bring more detail into the mountains. I'm not quite sure about that. Let's try reducing the blacks to bring the level back to where it was. Let's reduce the shadows a bit. Try even darker. Now, just going to increase the dehaze. And it brings out more details. Sort of gets rid of the fog. But because I've done all that changes to the lights, I need to counteract it by reducing the saturation slightly. I also need to counteract that with a little bit of blue tint, so making it a colder picture because it's a storm. A little bit of Vignette. Now the positives make it white, the negatives make the corners black. And I prefer to use the black because it allows me to draw the eyes in. Now to counteract the darkness of the Vignette, and also just to bring a bit more attention to the sky and the light hitting the mountains, I'm increasing the highlights. Let's reduce the saturation to counteract that a little bit. And I'm happy with that. So that's quite a nice light. So let's see how that affects John. John or Arthur, or whatever his name is. He's in a strange position simply because I had stopped running by the time I took that photo. I rather like the picture of him. I like his facial expressions. I like the angle I've hit it. I like the shadow over his eyes. I don't even mind the hat. So rather than try and frame it and put him in the center, I'm just going to take the photo as it is now. Now this is a picture that would work very well as a landscape and portrait, but for Instagram I'm going for portrait. So what I'm going to do actually is move the bottom right crosshair onto his eye. So that's the main focus because he's got an interesting frown going on there. So I'm going to increase the shadows just to bring out some more detail. Increase the highlights as well. And it flattens it a little bit, but I feel that it's just bringing out more of his face. Increasing the exposure just to brighten the picture, because it's a very dark picture. But now I've messed with all that light, I'm going to reduce the saturation a touch. The grass is a bit prominent, so let's make that darker by reducing the luminance on the green and yellow. Touch. Let's see. That's about right. And again, I'm just going to wash out the picture a bit. Increase a bit more to the whites. And I'm focusing on his face while I'm doing all this. Let's reduce the blacks a bit more. And that's about right, I think. A little bit more white. A bit more detail on the cheek. And I'm happy. Sir? No. I can't pass that by. I mean, it's a fairly obvious shot, granted. Because you've got the warm tones, but you've also got the cool blues. Got an interesting mountain, you've got the forests. There's a lot going on, but it's quite harmonious. Again, drop the blur strength. I don't know if it would make a blind bit of difference, but as I said at the start, I want to capture as much detail as possible. It's almost a shame about the birds, but I can probably crop in and lose. Well, this was an easy picture to take, and it's just as easy to crop. So let's just line that up. We're going to keep the bird in there because I don't think it's too distracting, so I'm just going to reduce the exposure to bring a bit more depth to it, and then reduce the saturation to counteract that. Not too much, because I can do it the sky using the saturation here. Oops. And the luminance, and then the same with the dark blues. And you can see it sort of washes it out a little bit because it's not the main element of the picture. Yes, just trying to get that right, trying to get them balanced. So I'm happy with that. Just decrease the highlights because it's a very bright sky. It's detracting from the trees and the framing at the foreground. Let's counteract it with a touch of overall exposure. Vignette to draw it in, and there's the picture. So I just want to look at this at a different angle. I don't know why, but I'm rather liking that. So again, need to set the focus more squarely on John or Arthur, whomever it is. Just going to move it slightly. That's a photo. I still love this picture. So let's see we in portrait. See if I can get them both on a third. No. Can't quite tie it in, so we'll make slight adjustments. We'll have them central. They're about right. Okay, so I want to reduce it so I can adjust these lights. Let's bring up the shadow. I'm going to make this quite a flat picture, so I'm reducing the highlights as well. Bring the colour back in. I quite like that washed out, but let's try a bit deeper. I don't want to go too far. So we've got a good bit of richness in the sky there. So let's just fade that out a bit. And that makes the clouds more interesting. Now let's bring out the green, because it's the red and the black of Arthur that I'm interested in. So everything else I can take out of the picture. I'm happy with that, so let's draw that in with a bit of vignette, and quite happy with that, but I just need to raise the brightness of it to about there, and there's the picture. I purposely tilted his head. And I'm slightly more central between those two trees, or something like that. Rather works. So the lone tree in the background, the horse and him. I'm not actually going to adjust the blur on this occasion. Sorry, I just realised my mic is very, very low. I'm just going to take it as is. I think you already know how I'm going to crop this because of all of what I said when I was taking the picture. So I'm just cropping it in slightly, making sure that Arthur, or John, is central. And now let's just drop saturates, and again I'm going to make this quite a flat picture contrast wise, so light wise. So I'm reducing the highlights quite a lot, and I'm going to do similar by increasing the shadows. I think that's quite nice. So let's bring in the colour. Yeah, there's quite nice. Again, drop the greens in darkness and then reduce the saturation. And I'll sort the tree out later. So let's bring some depth, and I'm very conscious of the horse while messing with the yellows. So I'm keeping an eye on that as well as the grass. Now the skies, I'm trying to get, it's really always difficult to get these sliders. So I'm reducing the saturation. I'm going for an almost grey look. There we are. There's a bit of blue richness to it. No, I can't quite decide. We'll try washed out first. I'll do the same with the blue, light blue. Let's bring that close to the blue. And we're bringing that more an emerald green, because I'm conscious of his suit as well. I keep missing these. Raising the luminance, and I'm looking at the tree on this one because it was quite a nice yellow light on it. So let's bring the saturation back. We're trying to maintain the balance of the picture, but I'm happy with this. So now I'm going to draw the eye in, by brightening the edges, and there we are. Get rid of orbit. Maybe a little bit more to the right, just so that wisp is out of the way. I love the fact that you can pause games, because in real life that train would have been gone by now and there was no way I'd get that shot. Maybe a bit lower. Close as possible. As close as it's going to get. Back a bit so I can shift it along. I'm going to take this photo shortly. But first I'm going to try the blur thing. So I've got the train nicely focused. So on this, I'm going to go into portrait and zoom in. Let's position the train. I'm going to go with the bottom left. So we've got plenty of the very interesting sky and how the smoke sort of blends into it. So let's now adjust the highlights by flattening the contrast. No, actually, let's bring everything down so we got some scope for some highlights there. Bring the colour back in. And let's drop the blacks down. So it's quite a contrasty picture here. So I'm bringing some details in with the shadow, just because the train is the main element here, so I wanted to see some of it. So next, the grass doesn't matter at all, so we're dropping that down to almost grey. It makes it blend into the background more. Now what I want to do is make the oranges more now yellowy actually, because I'm looking at the clouds. I'm going to bring the saturation in. I'll deepen the blues and then make it, just trying to blend it in so it's the same sort of pop as the orange in the sky. Now we've done that, I'm not actually happy with the framing, so I'm going to try it slightly more central. No, let's try that again. That's okay, but I'm not 100%. On the right third, upper right third. No. I actually think I'm going to have it back where it was. Should have gone with the first time. But fortunately, most of the adjustments are already done, so touch of vignette, and that's the picture. Okay, we're going to do a side shot actually, or maybe one of those type pictures a little bit closer. Cannot go any better than that, I think. And that's just to give me the chance to try and get the same angle, but better framing. So let's just increase that. Bring this back a bit. Slowly, slowly. I think around about there. Increase the focus, the size of the focus area. That nose is just slightly out still. Might actually push it forward a bit. Increase the exposure a lot. To avoid the artifacts. I actually went with the first picture I took on this. So again, I'm going to crop it, but I'm zooming right in because I'm only interested on the face. May go for... I was going to put his ear on the top right hand third, but no, I'm just centralizing the face. So next we're going to drop out all colors so we can focus on the light. So I'm going to increase the whites, going to increase the highlights. So I'm going for a very deep contrast on this. So that's the shadows and the blacks. Let's bring the colors back in until we get the right sort of warmth to it. Just about there. Bit of vignette. And there's the picture. Try that again. I like his shadow. I no longer have the blade of grass, which is good. Actually, he's ruins every shot, but I should theoretically. So no, I can't do it. That would most likely be the straightest I can get that. I'm going to take that shot. So let's crop this picture. Should I have him bottom right, cross? It's a good position, but I'm just going to move him central first. Let's see how that goes. I'm lining up the bottom third on his shoulders. Quite happy with that. But it's not quite right. I just need to tilt it so he's standing more upright. Helps if I go the right way. There we are. Oh, about there. I'm happy with that. So again, we drop the watercolor out, and with the white, highlights, I'm going to increase it a fair bit, about 6. Increase the whites as well, because it's a nice moonlit sky. Drop the shadows just to counteract the brightness and bring some colour in. I'm rather liking the hint of blue rather than the overall presence of it, so it's just balancing that perfectly. About there. And drop the vignette. Draw the eyes, and I'm doing quite a lot here. Let's try bringing that in. I just need to see the shape of it. I only want the corners. So now I can draw it. Reduce the amount of strength to where I want it. About there. And brighten the picture overall, because Vignette does darken a picture. And it's already a dark picture to start with. So that's, oh, a bit too far. A little bit less. And there we are. Okay, I feel like I'm a tourist. I'm stopping every 5 minutes, but it's good light. I can't resist it. But unfortunately, nothing quite frames right. I don't believe. Oh no. That's... I can't go high enough. So what I'm trying to do is where the mountains dip, that is where, so you can see it there. I want that hidden behind this. I'm not sure how effective this will be. It's purely an experiment. So I'm going to take that. I'm going to see if I can raise it. No, I cannot without coming back. Getting those halfway, or at least at a coherent position. Should be about there. So the main focus here is that windmill, I suppose you would call it. So let's try positioning it. Try and get in the bottom right. Now that smoke is a bit, it's too distracting. So let's try a central position. Maybe a bit further down. A little bit to the left. Come on, there we are. I'm just using the crosshair markers. About there. Okay, so next we're going to use the saturation so we can just focus on light. I'm going to increase the highlights quite a bit because I like the central brightness. We're just going to bring the blacks down to really make the propellers pop. Touch more white in there to brighten it, and let's bring the colours back. About 36. Again, I'm not too interested in the blue, but the light blue, so that centre line, I just want to highlight a little bit. Let's bring a bit more colour in so we can see what we're working with. Bit of Vignette. That makes a nice moody picture. Let's drop the greens from the surrounding areas because again I'm not that interested in them. And a touch more exposure to brighten the picture, and then we're done. It seemed like wherever I looked in this stream there was something to shoot, but I am pleased with the selection that I made. In some of these edits, I took out the colour before adjusting the light settings and also used the HSL to remove the colours that I didn't want in the picture. Now sometimes I went with a shallow contrast for a softer looking picture and introduced the colours until I found the look that I was going for. I hope you enjoyed this video, so like if you did and subscribe if you'd like to see more, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.